Remember Adam said that we need a jingle.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Praise the Pickle podcast. My name is Kevin Hart and I will be your host this week.
Spooky.
I know, very different. It'll take a bit of getting used to, but we'll get there. I am with, to my left, is Dan Watts.
Hello. It's always me first. Why do I always get introduced first?
Well, I always introduce you first because you have the same surname as me. I don't know why.
Kevin's just falling into habit. It's fair enough.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
To my right is Adam Skinner.
I wasn't expecting my name to be next.
No, it's alright. Everyone's equal in my podcast. And under the table is Ben Watts.
Hello, everyone.
Ben, we've told you about this.
Get off your
warning.
It feels so weird not being the host, man. This is such a bizarre experience. Yeah.
This is Praise the Pickle podcast, where we talk about video games, everything we love, hate, and find incredibly mediocre about said video games. And this week, we'll be answering the question: do video game developers benefit or hinder when releasing early access content? For example, alpha stage games, beta stage games, demos, all that kind of stuff. I want to first start with a tiny little game. The game will be essentially, it'll take about a couple of minutes, and then we'll find out all the answers at the end. Okay?
Is the game Terraria?
Yeah, you're just gonna listen. The podcast is just gonna be us playing Terraria, and you just listen to us clicking.
I mean, Terraria did have a very good early access. But the game, okay. So I want you to all get your phone.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it'll be next to you. Get your notes up.
Yeah.
Is it okay? I've got one of those phones with the rotary dialing mechanisms. Is that okay?
No, it's not. Okay, come on. Anywhere you can write stuff, and it won't just disappear. Don't know why that would ever exist, but
the worst note-taking app ever.
An auto-cleaning whiteboard.
Okay, so we all know what the question is. Now, I want you all to write down at the top your answer as to whether or not you believe it benefits or hinders developers. Okay?
The developers or the game, the final product itself?
Just the final product itself, just the game itself.
Okay. So is it yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
I also...
sorry, my phone's on loud, sorry. yeah.
I also want you to write down what you believe everyone else's answer will be.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Are we all good?
Yep.
Okay. Now I want to know what people's first impressions are of this question. Just your thoughts and feelings. Just let it out there, and then I'll give you some examples and backgrounds of whether or not both good and bad parts of it all, just to see whether or not it might give you guys something to think about. So, Has anyone got any obvious things that are out there that as to maybe why they don't believe it does?
I don't think we'd have as many good indie games if there wasn't such a thing as early access.
Why?
Because I feel like, in general, it's a good way for a smaller project to get funded early enough to continue development. Because lots of people get into game development and don't realise how big of a task it is. It's quite a mammoth of a challenge to overcome, especially in the later stages when you get to the optimization and polishing and stuff like that. Lots of games get to a certain point and then people's lives take over. They have work and family and whatnot, and trying to do that as well as develop a game, which is quite a tasking thing, doesn't always work out. So I feel like if people are funded, they can put more time into the project. So I think generally it's resulted in some pretty good stuff.
Yeah, so it's more of a almost depending on the size of the, like generally on like an indie game basis, it's pretty good idea.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it depends on the size of the company as to whether they can get away with it almost. But then the other argument is like, why would a AAA game need early access? And that the other side of this is game testing. But basically, if you don't say a game is early access and it has problems, then people will say, "Oh, well, it's not even finished." But if you say it's early access, then at least you have a fallback. You can say, "Well, it's not completely finished yet, and you're gonna run into problems." So I feel like sometimes it's just like a safety net for game releases by just calling it early access, just to stop people whining about it not being finished.
Yeah, I mean, you see that a lot nowadays. I mean, like, look at PUBG. That's probably still in early access now, isn't it?
Oh, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
I think. I mean, a lot of like anything I looked at, PUBG was up there with the example of just sheer terrible early access releasing. Well, it was good when it was believable to be early access until it was in early access for about what was that 2 years now or something, 3 years, how long it's been out for?
Yeah, I think I feel like there almost needs to be a limit as to how long early access can be, because it does begin to just take the piss. Because PUBG is the perfect example of early access done badly, because you can't say something's in early access if the stuff that you're releasing for it is like new content. Like early access, the difference between early access and the final product should be bug fixes and fundamental issues with the gameplay and stuff like that. The difference between the first stage of early access of PUBG, when it had one map and all that stuff, say they release it now, it's now got like 5 maps and loads of stuff like that, and it just feels a bit weird. It feels like their focus is completely wrong for a game that's in early access. It should have a release and then they can stop pumping out new content for it. But yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of the time there can be, with early access, nowadays when you see a lot of early access games, their prices are actually quite hefty, considering early access games.
Yeah, the most recent one I know about is Mount and Blade Bannerlord. I believe that's early access. People have been waiting for this game for like close to 10 years.
A long time.
And it's just come out on early access, but it's still like 40 quid, I think.
Yeah.
So it's basically a base game price for early access.
Yeah,
I don't know. They're technically an indie studio, I would say. I think that's fair to say, because they haven't really made much apart from Mount and Blade, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it's a weird kind of grey. It's a blurred line, isn't it? In terms of when should a game be early access, and when should it be taken out? Because
I feel like Ben said, some companies use it as a way to save money on game testing. I think why we should pay people to find these bugs when we can get people to pay us to find them.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's not just that though, is it? Because it's game testing now compared to what game testing used to be. It's two completely different things. Like how many game testers would you need to be able to find every bug in, for example, Red Dead Redemption 2? A massive, massive game with loads of, different storylines and intertwining storylines and just physics bugs and stuff like that. Like that's the sort of stuff game testers would historically find. That they would, if you look at how game testers used to do it, they Dan, correct me if I'm wrong. It used to be literally like you would have to test each thing, like to each combination of buttons, each doing a certain attack against a certain wall or something a certain number of times and stuff like that, just to find out if there's any physics bugs and stuff like that. But how many game testers would you need to be able to test that in such a massive scope game? And there's so many games now which have massive scopes that it's just like the only feasible way of getting this game tested is by releasing it and letting the population find out what's wrong with it, because you would have to spend so much money to get people to test it. Like, it's ridiculous.
The thing is, there's no such thing as a bug-free game. Like, no, it doesn't matter how polished and how many patches they put into it, there's still always going to be a bug or a crack in the seams somewhere. So it's no good. What I'm saying is, it's no good saying that once the game has been fully patched out and all the bugs are fixed, then it's classed as not early access anymore, because there's no definitive switchover point, if that makes sense. So I don't know, it's weird. Lots of companies do it in different ways. There's early access schemes. Steam have got their, I think it used to be called the green lighting system, and now it's just called Steam Early Access. Then you've got GOG have got one, Xbox call it, I can't remember what they call it, the Xbox testing program or whatever. So wherever you're planning to publish your game, there is a system to do this. I just think it's regulated in a very different way depending on which direction you go in. There's no backlash if for a developer, if they release a game and keep it in early access for a really long time, as long as they're continually fixing things and patching things, they can kind of use that as a band-aid, that label. They can use that as a shield to say, yeah, we know there's some bugs in it, we know there's some problems with it, but it's still early access. Look, guys, it's still got the early access tag, so you can't really blame us too much. So, from a developer's point of view, I don't really see why they would jump the gun and take it out of early access. I don't feel like that's going to improve sales per se. I don't feel like that's going to help them get the game into more people's hands. It's not going to help the game do any better, because we're so immune to that early access tag now. Like, I'm sure that most of us have gone on Steam, looked at a game, said, oh, that looks pretty good, I'll get it, without even considering whether it's early access or not by this point. We just kind of buy it anyway, depending on how much content it's got, whether it appeals to us. It's one of those things, now that it's so mainstream, it's kind of just blended into the general release market.
But do you not think that the whole idea of early access is just kind of pointless thing? Because no game, like you said, there's no transition point. There's no point where it's like, yes, the game is now completely bug free and ready to be fully released. So surely it would make more sense across the board if every game was released and it was just common knowledge that when a game is first released, it's not going to be in a perfect shape, And it's kind of like, what's the purpose of an early access tag if you can just keep it in early access forever? It just seems a bit...
There kind of needs to be some standards, doesn't there? Because otherwise you could just release a game that is wireframed. It doesn't have any textures yet. It's just basically a tech demo,
Yeah,
a minimum viable product, a prototype.
But most things do have standards, though, don't they? Most, Steam is probably the worst example of this. So it takes Steam out of the equation because they just release literally anything on it. I don't think they even have any sort of system in place to make sure a game is actually a game.
Convenience store.
Convenience store, Exhibit A. But everyone else does have that, Xbox aren't going to release a game that's just a pile of shit, they won't do it because it's them that get the backlash for it quite a lot of the time, so
yeah, I think it's a powerful tool for developers, overall,
especially in the indie market, like you said.
Especially in the indie market. It's just it's bigger AAA developers that use it to cut corners and save money. That's kind of what I have a problem with. It irks me a bit.
Yeah.
With Ben's point about the moving of figuring out where to call the game complete and ready to come out of early access, I feel like a lot of games grow in scope during that early access period. With they'll become popular, and then I think the developer feels like they need to add more to it than they originally intended because of how popular it's become, and then that complete point just keeps getting further and further away. I think that's what happens when games just get stuck in early access. It's because they have developer creep, is it called?
Yeah, feature creep.
There's a term. Yeah, feature creep. That's it.
Yeah, I guess because on Kickstarter it kind of works in a slightly different way. When you fund the project on Kickstarter, which is essentially another form of early access funding, generally because you'll usually get early access to the product, so you'll get it before everybody else, or you'll have alpha access to it. There's usually a list of criteria, and often there are milestones as well. So if we reach 100% funding, these are all of the features that will be in the final product. If we reach 125% funding, then you'll get all of those features plus a bit more. And then there'll be kind of fixed, set in stone guidelines of what to expect. And then based on that, it's like a tick box system. You can just tick them off and say, look, once that 100% thing is complete, the game is no longer early access. At every point up until that moment, it's in early access. So a system like that makes sense. But when it's just here's a game, what do you guys think of it? What should we change? What's broken? What should we add? It leaves it a bit too vague, and it's difficult to get out of that. And I'm sure it's annoying for developers as well to have a game and just be stuck in that early access cycle as well. I'm almost certain that it's not always malicious intent. It's not always some way of.
I think it's fair to say in the vast majority of cases it's never malicious. Like it's not.
Yeah, but I think people do jump to that conclusion quite a lot. They say, "Oh, it's early access. They're just trying to rinse us for all of our money. It's never going to come out of early access." Some companies have done it really well and clearly defined what their early access program is going to be, and other companies have just found themselves stuck there for whatever reason.
But it could be the case that they're stuck there because they've put time and effort into this one particular, like trying to get their early access out, and then they see a bit of popularity, for example, and then they feel like they can keep it there for a bit longer to get more popularity, and also, depending on how they fund it or how they price their early access, it might depend on how much money they're getting from it. I mean, if they say they've that game that you're talking about, Adam, they put it out there £40. If a lot of people are jumping on that, they might think to themselves, well, there's no point in us stopping the early access. We could almost just keep building on the early access.
Well, just keep that safety net there, because why not? if it's already doing really well, what benefits are going to be to them to fully release it? If you just keep it in early access and you still have that safety net when things go wrong. So
I think safety net's a really good term, actually. I think that's how a lot of people use it.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's quite different, it definitely used to be different, but is that early access used to be cheaper. That was the, because then you're sort of meeting halfway, aren't you? You're sort of saying, I'm willing to accept that this game is going to have bugs and issues, and I'm going to work with the developer in a weird, not officially working, but by providing feedback and reviews and all this sort of stuff. But consequently, you are going to charge me less for that. So I'm doing you a favour, and you're giving me it at a cheaper price, doing me a favour. It's kind of like a tit for tat sort of thing. But as time's gone on, it's now just that's you're paying whatever the price is for the game, like that. that's it.
I feel like a lot of developers might feel like they're missing out on terms of profit when if they release something early access and it comes with a cost, and people find this game really good and it gets really popular and people keep buying it. When it comes to full release and they do bump up the price or whatever it is, they've already got that game. I'm like, from what I can gather, that's how generally it works, because they're kind of giving them the money early so they can potentially get a good cheap game. So nowadays,
sorry, Kevin, go
on. Like as we've seen, they've just they are ramping up the prices for early access games because they think, well, if people like this game and it gets popular, they'll buy it no matter what, and then they won't miss out on that profit and revenue.
I think there's two other aspects to that. It's early access is a good opportunity to test the water and see, because nobody really knows how much they should charge for their game, especially indie studios, because the scale of different prices is so vast. Like, Some games are $1.99 and sell millions of copies, and some games are $4.99 and sell nothing because it's perceived as being too expensive. So it's trying to find that sweet spot, and I think you do see prices fluctuate quite a lot during the early access phase, and it just gives them some data to go on, and they can sort of see how to place themselves in the market. I think that's an interesting aspect of it, and it's also the perception of quality or perception of value based on the price. So like Apple recently released a set of $700 or £500 wheels for their MacBook, for their Mac Pro. It's just a set of wheels with an Apple logo on it, but because
Wheels
they priced
for what?
Wheels, like wheels that you put on the bottom of your computer to wheel it around the house, like trolley wheels.
Why on earth would someone want that?
Well, because they're Apple, and that's the thing. If they priced them at 150, 200 quid, nobody would buy them. But because they're priced at $700 and they look shiny and they come in a nice box, people are like, oh, these must be really high quality because of the price. That's not necessarily true. It's just a marketing technique.
Wait, was that just a made-up number, or is that the actual price of these wheels?
They are $700 in America.
Holy cow!
The last time I checked. Yeah, for 4 wheels.
All right, I'm gonna jump into some backstory in terms of.
Just quickly before you do that, Kev, I just want to clarify: PUBG is not in early access. It actually, so everything I said about PUBG earlier, I apologise, it's not true. PUBG went out of early access with the release of Miramar, the desert map, which was the first map they released. So what I was saying about them releasing new stuff during early access, they didn't actually. So ignore that.
So actually, that seems like a pretty fair example of how it.
Yeah, they actually did it quite well.
They release a map with all of the game mechanics in it, and they test all of the mechanics in early access, and then the content comes later as part of the actual release.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't fix any of the mechanics, but yeah.
One of my choices was a really good example of how to do early access well, and that was RimWorld.
RimWorld.
RimWorld, when I bought it, was in early access. I can't remember how long it was in early access, but it got a 1.0 release, which was when it officially became the full game. But then that was kickstarted, so it had more predefined goal as to when it was full.
Yeah. Anyway,
Hades is another example of a really nice early access program.
That's one that also jumped in price when it became a full game.
Yeah, they did it right.
Right. So, a little bit of backstory. So, although early access has been around for a long time, the first, I don't think it was really spoke about much about the problems with early access until a couple of examples I've got where it's been almost like a bad light started kind of going on to early access, and it became more of a bigger thing. From the first one I could see was a game called Space Base DF9.
Never heard of that.
Yeah, so it was released in early access in 2014, and when it was released, there was they basically had a massive promise list with the release. They were like, okay, we're releasing this, we need to test it all, see what you think of it, and there's a massive list of all these things that were meant to be added to the game, and people were just, they were really thrilled, they were so excited about this, and it basically did, all these promises were just let down, almost like Google, not Google. Is it Google Stadia? No, what was
Stadia.
The one? Yeah,
Stadia.
Almost like so it's almost like they released with all the people were spending all this money, everyone was excited about it, and they basically just got a bit lazy. And
what's this game called? Sorry, Kev.
Space Base DF9.
Alright.
It's got 2 out of 10 on Steam. Overwhelmingly negative reviews. That's out of 3,000 odd reviews. It's essentially been called abandonware because the developers, it looks really good as well, from the video clip that I'm seeing here in the screenshots, it looks like something that I would probably play and quite enjoy, but they're basically, so you can still buy it, which is amazing that you can still buy it for $6.99.
This was made by Double Fine Productions.
Wow,
that's mad.
Published or developed?
Developed and published.
Wow. No, is that the same as Double Fine Studios?
Yeah. The
It is Double Fine.
It's
People made
mad, isn't it?
Psychonauts and stuff. That's really surprising.
yeah.
So yeah, from the looks of it, they just disappeared.
Just with Kevin's intro, I thought he was going to talk about a completely different game. I had one in my mind, and then when he said space base,
Star Citizen.
No, that did pop to mind as well, though.
Okay.
I was thinking DayZ.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That was the first early access that I knew of.
The standard
where the
you
mod
mean?
from Armour was still better than.
Oh, the
the
DayZ
actual
mod
game
in
that
Armour
they
was
released.
great.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah, I don't know if DayZ actually ever got released.
I think it did. I swear you could buy it at one point.
No, you could,
You can buy it,
but early
I don't know
access.
if it was still early access.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, and then I guess almost an example of that, what you've just said, there was another quite early one. It was a game called The Stomping Land. And when it came out in early access, the only price I could find of it at the time was $25. And it was a case that when they released it, it was quite successful again, but they just, I guess it became abandonware. They just, as soon as they released it, they just stopped doing anything with it.
The Stomping Land is textbook abandonware. It was kickstarted with pledged of $114,000, and then basically that is like the from what I understand, the most common way of abandonware happening is when it gets funded through something like Kickstarter, because they take all the money, they release a botched job thing in early access or in whatever state it's in, and then never finish it because they're just like, no.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Unfortunately, that's kind of become an expected part of Kickstarter now. It's like 90% of the projects never even come to fruition.
Yeah.
5% do, and then the other 5% do, but end up being absolute garbage.
Yeah,
It happens a
There's
lot.
very, very
There's also-
few success stories in terms of video games from Kickstarter. The only one that I can think of is A Hat in Time, which did really well. But
There was the Chronicles of Illyria as well, which was a really promising looking MMO, which turned out to be a massive scam. Didn't even get to early
I
access
saw
stage,
this one. Yeah.
as far as I'm aware. I don't think anyone even got to play it. All the videos turned out to be manufactured and artificially made, and it was just awful. Anyway, we're tangenting a bit.
Yeah.
So
I have
I just looked it up, and DayZ did get released.
Oh, okay, yeah. I thought
Out of early access in 2018.
No, what a success that was, eh?
Yeah.
So I've got a few examples of early access. Some they had a good light above them, around them. Some bad. So there's a lot of them that we quite like here. There's Hades, that had apparently a very, very successful early access.
Yeah, Dan kept singing the praises of that one.
Yeah. Risk
I will
of
also sing the praises of that.
exactly. Risk of
still
Rain
been
2.
Yeah, still going strong. Have they come out of early access yet? I think they were bound to start of this year.
Hades
I'm
had, I think.
mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the next one, Kev? Risk of Rain 2.
Yeah, Risk of Rain 2, which I believe might still be in early access.
I think it is,
I think they've got a clear set of goals as well. I think from what I remember, they wanted to release all of the characters, but when you went into the game at any stage of the early access period, there was always padlocks
Yeah.
over the things that hadn't been released yet. So it was quite clear that once all of that's done, that's a clear indication that the game is basically finished. So it was never this
were they not
vague
released,
concept.
or had you just not unlocked them?
They weren't
Not
released.
released.
Yeah, there were characters that were in development,
Because I
and
know
it was
in
quite
Risk of
clear.
Rain 1 you had to unlock the characters.
Yeah, in the second one,
Yeah,
there
you
were
still
like black
do.
silhouettes. The characters, so the characters you have to
okay.
unlock were black silhouettes, and then there were padlocks and ones that hadn't
Yeah,
been
and it
released.
said very clearly. You just rolled your mouse over it, over any, and some of the things were items, some of them were different menu functions, and it would say this is in development. So you knew what you were getting, what was
Yeah.
missing, and what was coming. And then I imagine, as I say, once all of those in development tags have been replaced with the actual content, that game will come out of early access.
And they're releasing a lot of new content quite often. I mean, and their updates are big as well. Like they're adding a bunch of new items, different game types, new bosses. Yeah, I mean, from what they're doing a pretty good job. Don't Starve, that had a really, really successful early access. I think the early access had a lot more success than the actual game. I feel like the game kind of
I think Don't Starve's pretty popular, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe I'm not really into that area, so maybe it doesn't. I don't feel the love as much.
Like it's definitely more popular when it was first in early access.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's a really interesting point, actually, because when you're building up the hype for a game, there's that whole curve of teaser trailer, and then maybe a gameplay trailer, then maybe a demo, and then maybe a demo/early access, and there's that whole hype train that builds up around the release. And if it's a new kind of unique product, it's going to be very hard to reignite that hype for the actual release of the game. So all of that hype kind of needs to come with the launch of the early access. So there's a different kind of momentum there that developers need to work with if they're using early access. It's quite an interesting thought.
Subnautica, it's a game that a lot of us quite like. Well, I think both. Have all three of you played it?
Yeah.
I've never played it, but I've seen stunning reviews of it.
Yeah.
You should definitely play it,
Adam. It's
Adam.
one of the most positively rated games I've seen.
Yeah, it's a really good game. It's a good one to play if none of your friends are online and you're just like, I've got nothing to play. It's such a good little escape game. Proper get immersed. It's very immersive.
Water, so.
Well, Ben and I played the mod for multiplayer on that.
Yeah, the mod wasn't
really?
great, but we can't use that
right.
against.
It was an okay mod.
It was okay. Yeah, the model animations and stuff were not great on the other players.
But I mean, that's a perfect example. I mean, the early access I heard was, from what I read, was pretty good, and in the actual game that came out, was just equally as good. It's a perfect example. And then the two bad examples, it's a lot harder to find. Surprisingly, it's a lot harder to find bad things about them. But there was a lot more bad reasons as to why early access is not as successful that I found than actual examples. But one of them is a game called 7 Ways to Die. Apparently that early access was... It just didn't do very good things for it. I would love to tell you why, but I actually forgot to get to that part.
Do you mean 7 Days to Die?
Maybe. It might have been 7 Days to Die and I accidentally pressed W instead of a D.
I'm pretty sure it's
7
7 Days to Die.
Game.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was a zombie game, yeah.
Yeah.
Well reviewed.
Oh, from what I could gather, a lot of people said it wasn't. It was like an example of one that was quite unsuccessful.
Oh, it's still in early access, isn't it?
Potentially.
I might be looking at the wrong game, to be honest.
And then the other one, I guess, is the one I already said about, is PUBG. Apparently, that was a bad example in terms of.
It is. So in terms of, I've just looked it up. It was kickstarted, so a successful Kickstarter campaign 7 years ago. And then it got released in alpha in September 2016, and it's still in alpha now. I think that's why people might refer to that as a bad example of early access, because frankly, that's just far too long to be considered early access, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. You can't be putting Yeah,
and the fact that it was kickstarted
as well. A failure then, early access, if length of time is an issue.
In a way, I guess. People should have a goal behind early access and an ending to it. It shouldn't just be like, oh, we're just going to release something out there and just see what happens with it. It should be you've got a goal behind it, a reasoning behind it, and then an end goal, something to finish with. Whereas, I guess, 7 Ways to Die doesn't have that. Star Citizen, I've heard that. I think Dan said before that he's very upset about that game.
Yeah.
Star Citizen.
Yeah.
It's never coming out, man.
Star Citizen is an interesting project, but the fact that it's burned through hundreds of millions of dollars is just unbelievable.
Didn't you say they spent a lot of money on the spaceship?
Yeah, it had a Kickstarter campaign. It's had loads of Kickstarter campaigns, but it had its first one in 2013, and it got $2 million. It's the
biggest funded project in Kickstarter history.
Yeah. And then basically
they blew past their goal by massive amount.
Yeah.
1,000% or something. Yeah.
Basically, people keep giving them money for things like spaceships for when the game comes out and fancy things like that. And we're talking ludicrous amounts of money here. And it's just never going to come out. Let's be honest. To be honest, like it's just not going to happen.
I hope you eat your words.
So do I. Honestly, so do I. But it's not going to happen. It's like the hype is.
I don't know
dead now.
It's not dead though. It's a really weird one because people still build PCs and still buy PCs and upgrade their hardware with the intention of playing this game in whatever
that's a
state
load of
it happens to
bollocks.
be in.
What?
They do.
I think it's got a very loyal fan base. So there's definitely going to be a group who will wait.
Well, they are delusional. That's all I'll say. That's just mental.
I think it's a good example. Some people I was going to say some people. No, that's what you said. That's not what I said. I've somehow woven our sentences together.
You think it's a good example?
I've lost
what you
it.
said?
It's a good example of a game that will never, ever, ever leave early access. Like, we know that already because we're never going to see what they consider a finished product because every major update that they do is huge. It's like a complete overhaul of the engine. It's a whole new planet or a whole new city, and these are like proper planets, like fleshed out cities with entire logistical systems and public transport and societies that live there. It's gonna keep growing, I think, until they run out of money, which could happen any day now. But if it does keep going at the pace it's at, it will eventually get to a playable point, I think, where people will like, oh, actually, this is quite good. This is an interesting
what have we seen
experience.
of it?
Quite a lot.
You can play it.
You can play it now.
I did air quotations on play then. It doesn't really work with a podcast.
You could experience it, yeah.
But, I mean, this game has raised over $250 million.
Holy cow.
No, that's at the end of 2019. That was the last figure. That is ridiculous. And the thing is that they're being overly ambitious. Everyone knows that. They're being overly ambitious. But what they with all this extra money, they should be hiring more people to get all the nitty-gritty work done so that it can be released. That's the problem.
Well, that is what they're doing. They've got hundreds and hundreds of staff in studios all over the world. They've got a massive team. Like, that's exactly what they're doing. They're just spending a lot of money on customizing this brand new engine that nobody's ever worked with before.
Is this game meant to be quite like a big game in terms of like?
Yeah,
they're creating a universe basically. That's what they're creating a completely separate like ecosystem and everything. Is mad, but
see, to me, it's almost making the game too big. Like I could imagine people thinking like this is a project in itself to play this game, and it almost being a turn off.
Yeah, but some people like that.
Yeah, some people do like that.
I mean,
but
just look at EVE Online. That's like a second job.
Yeah.
To play that.
That's pretty. Yeah. But like,
but people still love it.
I just don't.
It's definitely going to have people that are willing to wait, just because of like sunk cost the amount of money they've put into it already.
They've got to have something to show for it, right?
Wait.
Yeah, they've got to.
They've got to have something.
I mean, I'm looking at their roadmap, and their roadmap is actually pretty good. Like they say everything that they're working on in each quarter.
Yeah, they do. It's
but
a really
at the same time,
I
will call it absolute bollocks that they have that many staff, because the amount of stuff that they're doing is not on for the amount of money that they've raised. So, quarter 2, 2020. This is the list. Characters 1. They're making 1 character. 2 locations. 2 AI, whatever that means. 7 gameplay things, elevator panels, wow, new targeting methodology, wow, 2 ships, 4 weapons, and 2 core tech. In an entire quarter, when you've raised that much money, that is not acceptable, in my opinion. Like,
yeah, but they didn't have that much money now. That's not the point. They're not just sitting on $50 million. Most of it's gone. And the main engine is there.
Like, the only way that sort of money should be gone is if you have enough staff to show for it. Like, I'm going to find out how many people work for this company. Hold on.
Anyway, let's come back to it, because we're kind of going off.
It's a fascinating game to read about, and the development process.
It's really fascinating to follow.
Very juicy.
Yeah. And the guy that I can't remember his name. What's his name?
Chris Roberts.
Yeah, Roberts Industries, right? he's got a bit of a history as well in making
he's
space
probably
games.
the reason most people backstarted it, because he made a previous space sim game that
He did
really well.
Yeah.
I can't
He knows
remember,
his stuff. He's got the ambition and the brain for it.
He's got, yeah, but
Can he manage money?
deliver?
Can he run a company?
Can he manage? Yeah.
Yeah.
They might have loads of stuff, but they're just really badly managed. Like Riot Games, the makers of League of Legends, they have loads of stuff.
Yeah.
But they're incredibly poorly managed.
Yeah. I wouldn't know.
I'm not even talking about like the lawsuits they're getting for like sexism and stuff. I'm just like actual management of the teams.
Anyway, we're getting a bit off topic here.
Come on,
on
Kevin,
topic.
bring us in.
Star Citizen does that to people.
Guess the other like really bad one was PUBG.
But now that I disagree with that now.
Okay,
I shouted on it earlier.
I'll tell you some more reasons.
I'll tell you for why.
I'll tell you for why. Okay, so I have like just a general list of positives and negatives. Some of them we have covered. Some of them might talk about. I think as Dan did mention, it helps small developers gain funding for projects. It helps developers get an idea of popularity, which in its own way has negatives and benefits over it, I feel like sometimes. Because then, if like more people are hearing about it, and then more they might feel like people are expecting a lot more than what it might come out to be.
Yeah, I think it's more just sort of gauging your audience.
Yeah,
sense, because it's fine. Because also, like, you don't want to spend 5 years making an absolute masterpiece, but people don't like it. You know, so you by releasing it in early access, you're releasing it at an unfinished state. So you've put half the time into it, for example, and you're releasing it in that state to find out whether it's going to be popular. Because if it's not going to be popular, you're not going to spend the next 2.5 years working on it, are you? Because
that's true.
That would be a disaster.
It gives you my ideas of like what people like about the game, what people don't like about the game. If you see reviews saying, this is bad, this part of it is bad, this part of it is bad, you can change it all. But then it might come to a point where people aren't going to look at that game again because bad reviews. I mean, game like I'm assuming all games, everything can be changed depending on criticism. Everything in the world. That's the whole point. You have reviews to change what isn't working. But if you release it,
just look at Last of Us 2. So I don't even know what the spoilers are, but I made the joke. I made it funny.
Yeah, if you release it in early access, gets really bad reviews, and it has a lot of things you want to change. You change them all, and it might come out to be a good project, but then you might spend all this time on something that people aren't going to look back at because they know how bad it is, and all the reviews are bad because people look at reviews a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's definitely something that can hinder. Like, I mean, going back to the original question, does it hinder or benefit the developers?
Yeah.
One of the big things is if you release it too early and you don't, remain very like proactive, have a proactive approach to feedback and things like that, then your early reviews from that super early access thing that you've put out there can really, really fuck up your entire project. So
it's just gonna have your game dead on arrival.
Yeah,
people's
exactly.
First impressions are that bad review from way back. It's what's going to stick in people's mind. It doesn't really matter if the game's changed a lot. People are still going to think back to when it was awful.
Yeah. I
mean, just look at No Man's Sky.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I feel like they've had a pretty good redemption arc, though.
They definitely did.
Yeah, I think they have improved the game immensely, but a lot of people are still hesitant to get it because of that initial early reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, if they'd released that as an early access title without going through Sony and doing the whole big bang, hyped up, launch event, then
they probably would have been
maybe
fine.
That would have been a different story, because they'd say, look, this is basically an early version of the game. We're still developing it. What do you guys like? What don't you like? Because the product that they have now is a result of tons and tons and tons of feedback. People have said, we want different planet generation, or we want more story, or we want more AI, or we want to be able to build bases. They had all these ideas that were fed back to the developers, and they did implement them. They listened to their audience, and they're clearly very good at that. But again, because they launched and said, this is the product, rather than this is the basis of a product, what do you guys want next? What needs fixing? Then it changed how that was perceived.
Essentially, No Man's Sky was early access when it first came out, but because it was published through Sony, it wasn't perceived as early access by anyone. Because, I
don't think it was. I think it was just unfinished.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was, because all these things that they promised would have been the milestones that would have been in place during an early access product, like base building, and because they promised loads of stuff before. They promised multiplayer. They promised big space fights and shit like that. And they just, if like you said, if this was released as an early access, it probably would have been pretty hypey. Actually, I think people would have been well on board with it, because it wasn't about what the game was missing. It was about it would have been, this is the point it's at, and this is what is going to be added in the future. And if they did that, it would have been absolutely fine. It's just because they got, tied to the back of this hype train and just flung across the country, and it was mental. Such a strange series of events.
Yeah.
Okay. There's two that kind of go together, which kind of backs up my point about PUBG. Is that if it gets too big, they might not put as they might kind of become a bit lazy and not put as much work into it, and it could also mean that they will instead of working on the main product, again, they will just be releasing a lot of stuff in the early access stage, and then, for example, PUBG, they were kind of updating little bits here and there, but they released an unfinished product, in my opinion. When they finally released it, it was still very poorly optimized. It was still climbing and jumping and all. It was just such a clunky game. It had a good basis, and the early access was good for an early access, but they released the full game as basically what an early access is, because, in my opinion, I think they just got too big for their booze. I think they were really big. People liked what they had, but they just they couldn't promise everything. They couldn't. They just fell behind, and you look at all these other battle royales that came out afterwards. How amazing they are! How precision and all the different techniques and mechanics and stuff you put into the game. Whereas PUBG, it almost had the core part of it, and it just kind of, they just didn't keep up, because I just feel like they got lazy.
I don't know if they did, though, because I feel like it's hard, because
they had a lot of money. They had a flipping heck of a lot of money.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like it's just in the nicest possible way, I just feel like it's just not a good game. I don't think it's anything to do with them getting lazy. I don't know how good the developers are. I don't know how good the engine that they used was. I don't,
but
things like that.
It must have been a fairly good game for people to want to.
No, it was only. It basically came out at the perfect time. That was it.
You think because of the Battle Royale?
Completely, yeah. That is the reason it did well. Is because Battle Royale blew up then, and partly due to PUBG, but it was what everyone wanted. It was the dawn of streaming. It was the time where streamers started becoming massive, and what better way to show your skill than playing a 1v99 game? Like it's perfect,
Didn't really have any competition either.
No, it didn't, exactly,
I think the only competition it had was
H1Z1,
X1Z1, which was an even buggier mess.
Yeah.
PUBG.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I don't know if they got lazy, because they have released, they're still releasing stuff for it now. So
wasn't until like Apex and Fortnite and the other one I can't think of.
It's still crap though. I just think that they.
That's harsh, man. Like, Fortnite's actually a good game. Like.
No, but I just think that they could have had so much
Personally, I think a lot of it's engine related.
I definitely think it's engine related. Yeah.
I think the very core coding within the project, I don't think they'd made anything like that before. They were kind of experimenting. They went in a bit blind. They didn't have any examples to go off. So it was all a big experiment that happened to blow up really quickly. And then they got themselves into a state where the game worked, as in people could join a server and shoot each other. But then, like, remember how long it took them to add things like jumping or vaulting? Like that was
so released
hard for
with
them to do.
Yeah.
And even when they did that, it was clunky as hell because the engine wasn't built for it. So it's like...
I mean, before we go any further talking about the engine, it does actually use Unreal Engine 4. So it's not the engine, it's the developers.
Okay, so not the layer 1 engine then. The way it's been built from the ground up. It's like, it's not... You said earlier on that, I think Kevin, you said it, when the game comes into early access, they're expecting feedback and that anything can be changed, but there is a line with that. Like you can't change everything about a project unless you're willing to completely start again.
Yeah, I get
sometimes
that, yeah.
you've got a foundation that you can't dig out the foundation and redo it all. And sometimes that just results in a fundamentally broken game that you can't do anything about. If that's the case, then you're kind of stuck with it.
But I mean, the main issue with that game for a lot of people was for the fact that the optimization was terrible. I mean, they released it on Xbox, and I'm sorry, but
that was a joke.
I've never known a game on Xbox to when you go into it not render. Like I didn't even think that was possible with something like an Xbox, and it did. I just.
Yeah, this takes us back to the quality testing thing, doesn't it? Where it's like, how the hell did that get past quality testing? Because I played a couple of games at Kevin's house. My lord, it is hilarious. Basically, you parachute in and nothing has loaded. And it doesn't take like 10 seconds or 20 seconds. It can take minutes, right? And people are like driving through invisible buildings and cars. And it's just a complete and utter clusterfuck. Like, it's ridiculous. And I cannot believe that ever got released. It's insane.
But this is the part where people are paying money for this game and expecting things. And then if you say that it was fully released... Again, I don't know. I feel like it was fully released at different times on different consoles.
Yeah.
So I think it wasn't fully released on Xbox. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's still quite buggy on Xbox. But anyway, but yeah, I'm gonna.
That brings us back to the question, though, doesn't it? Like, there's a line with early access. You can't release a product that you know in yourself is fundamentally broken and doesn't work and expect people to pay for it. Like, that's crossing the line of early access and testing and having people paid to test the game and get into the game early. If the game is really, really shit and doesn't work, you can't make people pay for it. That's not right. There needs to be some kind of standard at the level of at least the game actually works. All the basic things that people would expect are there. All of the mechanics work. It's not a complete mess. You can't have people pay for that and then give them the product later. Like, it's just not fair to expect people to have faith in you to fix it, because sometimes people don't. And the developers that don't fix the problems in early access are the people that are giving early access a bad name. They're the people that are... people are funding on Kickstarter less now because of the amount of abandonware games and the amount of people that have run away with people's money. It's just not good for the industry. I think there should be some kind of minimum standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely agree.
You shouldn't have had to pay for that on Xbox at all. Like, you shouldn't have had to pay for a game that doesn't even fucking load. Like, what's that all about?
But then at the end, I mean, does that not put a bad light on early access games, because you don't know what you're going to expect when you buy it?
Yeah, completely.
You know what?
Yeah.
I have a quite an alright example coming up as to this. I'm going to finish off the general good and bad parts of it. Potentially be overpriced, so the pricing part of it could be an issue. It's difficult to know how much to price it, which we said earlier on. It helps with testing, which we said earlier on. There has been at one moment, or it might not happen as much nowadays, but it has been known to crash PCs and corrupt files and stuff with early access games.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Which, is probably the worst thing that could possibly happen with an early access.
What was the one? There was one on PlayStation, wasn't there? That bricked consoles. I can't remember what it was.
Neither can I.
It was something in early access.
I feel like it was a big game though. It was like a AAA, wasn't it?
It might have been. I can't remember. Anyway, go on. Yeah.
I think that's extremely unlikely and very rare.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Like I said, it probably be a quite dated argument.
Yeah, but it does still happen, and that is something I think worth considering. Because if a game developer is making you pay to test a product that results in you having your hardware broken, then that developer should be responsible for that.
Completely.
At some level.
Yeah. That's like more like a lawful thing, to be honest. Like, you know.
Yeah, and it's not the hardware, because most developers, if they've managed to release a game that people are buying in early access, can afford to buy a few people a console. If a few of them broken, it's the data. It's people that have lost all of their save data, if it's a PC, lost all of their personal bits, data.
Yeah. It just, again, it's an example of how gaming is so different to... Like, the laws within gaming are just so strange. Because, like, if you took your car to a mechanic and they did a botch job fixing the engine, and then the next day the engine explodes, they will be responsible for that, you know? And that applies across the board with any electronics. But for some reason with gaming, it's just a different kettle.
I think it's because it's all digital, isn't it? It's all in the air, so it's almost like...
Yeah, but it's not, because it's still physical things. If it's physical things that are happening to something, then it's
I think it's a matter of time, though. I think it's just because compared to other consumer stuff, gaming's still relatively... It's not new, but
it is, though.
Boom is a lot more recent, whereas cars have been around for ages. They've had those awkward legal moments, and they've gotten past those. It's the same. The law's not quick to catch up.
Yeah, you can almost imagine it will all be, all those laws and stuff will come in time to consoles and gaming and anything that revolves around downloads and... Yeah,
I feel like we're in the middle of that now, where mainstream media is starting to catch attention of things that are happening in the gaming world, you know. It's starting to get...
Well, it's weird because it's the newest of the main entertainment industries, and yet it's also the biggest and the fastest growing.
Yeah, by far, yeah.
It's a strange place to be.
Alright, and then my final one is... It could potentially delay the launch because people might work on the early access stuff rather than the actual main product, but that's just a little bit.
Personally, I think that's a good thing in a way. If there's stuff broken that needs addressing, then they probably weren't as ready to launch on their announced launch date as they thought they were. So.
Yeah,
I've always said I'd rather have a game delayed and launch in a better state than have it.
I mean, look at
just look at this year. That's what you need to do. Look at this year. You know, Last of Us 2. This is going to come out in the perfect state now.
I think they're learning, though. That's the thing.
I agree.
They're definitely learning and improving from these mistakes.
Last of Us 2 is a mistake.
Upset when Cyberpunk's been delayed.
Yeah.
I mean, everything was delayed this year.
Perfect as it can be.
Yeah.
Yep.
Alright, so I've got a little paragraph of... take this with, like, almost an open mind, because it's basically, this person talked about a specific game called Dungeon Dashers, but he also dips into the general conversation they were having, but he makes some good points. He says, I also did a pros and cons list, as you did. I came up with pretty much the exact issues. My biggest concern, it will get less revenue later, as it would have less of a splash when the game launched, but the counter argument is that you'll get more exposure and word of mouth before the game is out. There's a large group of people who won't buy your game yet because they are scared of early access, which is reasonable. I've played Neo Scavenger over a year, so I imagine that that the builds you have now would be very high quality compared to that. I said that it's a perfect fit because the early access audience will love to comment on a procedurally generated game like yours, even if you don't take all of their feedback into account. So I don't think you have to worry about players' misunderstanding or bad first impressions, which partly I agree and disagree with. As long as you participate actively with your community and are direct with their status of your game, they will understand. Which I think makes some good points. I think that was one thing PUBG did very well, was when it was in early access, and it started gaining a bit more traction, they were very vocal with their community.
I think that's the most important thing out of all of this. The most important thing is, if you're going to release something in early access, you need to have a really proactive approach. Like I said earlier, like you have to make sure that you are constantly, you need to reassure everyone that they have made the right choice by investing in this early stage of the project. You know, like I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways, I guess, is that you just need to make sure that the audience knows what's happening, and you don't want people even for a second thinking that something's going to be abandonware. Basically, you want them to know every step of the way of what is happening. You know, because they're essentially they're kind of like stakeholders. You know, kind of, not really, because they don't get anything out of it. But you know, they're investing in the project now, so they deserve to know. They are
getting things out of it, aren't they?
Yeah, but I mean, there's not like stakeholders and they get a reimbursement money wise, but you know, they're you know, they have put their money into it, so they are now a part of this project. In my opinion, that should be how it works. Like Hades is a good example. They were every single step of the way consistent updates. You know, so like on Kickstarter, for example, you've got what are those things called? Something trackers, where a lot of the bigger like board game. I look at a lot of board games on Kickstarter, so they use this system basically. I don't know what it's called. I can't remember, but where everyone that's backed it can essentially track the whole project, like what stages they're at and everything like that. And I feel like that's kind of the solution almost. You know, just keeping people up to date.
I think it's just clear communication. Just really helps.
Transparency.
RimWorld, I think, did regular blog updates from the main developer, which were great for seeing how it was going and if it was on track or not, and what to expect.
And people won't mind if there's a problem in the development. Like, there's been tons of Kickstarter projects that I've seen where something has happened in the creator's personal life, and that's not just in games. Like, somebody is making a new type of screwdriver or whatever, and they get halfway through prototyping it, and suddenly something happens in their family and they have to stop development for a year. As long as they tell people that, then I think most of the audience are going to be okay. Like, sorry guys, there's a bit of a delay because something's come up. And the same works with games. Like, we found a pretty critical issue with the engine and we need to rewrite a hell of a lot of the code. Very sorry guys, didn't know this was a thing. It's going to take a bit longer than expected. I think people will be okay with that, as long as you let them know what's going on and don't just try and wing it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's with anything, though. If you give something money and then you just get radio silence from them, that's always going to make you a bit panicky.
Yeah, I've been waiting for my eBay order for 3 weeks now. What the hell's going on?
All right. So I think we can all kind of, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we can all agree that it's, in general, if done correctly, it can have the benefits are over the, you know, a crazily good, the benefits of having early access. But in reality, that's not how it's always done, and other companies can almost make a bad aura over early access and could potentially hinder early access or like people wanting to get early access. But I don't want a yes but this or a no but this. I want a yes or a no. Just like you,
it's impossible,
just like we did. Well, we're gonna have to be doing it, okay? Just like we did at the beginning. I want to see whether or not this conversation has changed your mind as to whether or not you agree or disagree.
Okay.
And then also whether or not you believe everyone else's opinion has changed.
Okay.
What's the question we're answering yes or no to?
Benefits or hinders, like at the start.
Yeah. Basically, benefits or hinders games in general. Just everything about a game.
I think it benefits.
Yeah. I think if I had to give it one word, I'd say benefits, but with lots of caveats.
Yeah. I said benefits if done right.
Yeah.
Did we all? What did we say for other people?
Benefits if done right.
Yeah. Me too.
I said everyone benefits. I said hinders for Kevin because he's a.
Damn it! You got that correct.
Did I?
Kevin is
yeah. A lot of the stuff that I read, there was like I don't know whether or not I was actively possibly searching for the negatives, because it might have been a lot harder to find them if there wasn't as many. If that makes sense.
I think the term "no news is good news" is very apt here. People only really talk about early access when they're talking about the bad stuff, But in reality, when people don't talk about early access, it's normally a good thing. If people aren't complaining about it, then it's normally fine. So when you're looking it up, when you're doing your research, most of the stuff you're going to find is probably going to be bad, because most of the stuff people are going to write about is bad because it's a talking point, So.
And I think people like looking at the bad parts of it. Like, would you rather click on an article that says, why is early access such a bad thing? Or would you rather click on something being like, early access is such a great idea? I feel like a lot of people are more...
the news, though.
Yes, that's the news.
News articles are always negative because it gets people engaged and rolled up, and people generally prefer to read negative things.
Bad news sells.
Bad news
People
sells.
like reading about others' misfortune.
Yep,
exactly. Makes themselves feel better about themselves.
Yeah.
That's why tragedies are so popular.
Wait, so Kev, I won the game. What do I get?
What's the prize?
Pride.
A sense of pride and accomplishment, you might say.
Oh, it's the first time I've ever had that.
There you go. We're all winners today, aren't we?
One thing I want to see more of, and I think there's a bit of a comeback to it now, which is kind of early access, is I want more playable demos.
Yeah.
I want to see more of that. I think the lockdown is going to make that happen a bit more than we expect. I think more studios are going to start releasing playable demos. Because a lot of the time they were limited to like show floors, EGX and Gamescom and stuff like that. You'd have to go there physically and you could play at a booth. But now they're kind of forced to release them. I want to see more playable demos. I think we've seen recently how successful they are. The Resident Evil 2 and 3 ones were very popular.
To me,
games are doing it.
Resident Evil 3 put me off of buying that game, the demo.
Yeah, there's always a risk as well. Yeah.
I think that's the reason a lot of people don't do it, is because you sometimes you need to be invested in the story and the gameplay loop and stuff like that to fully appreciate the game. If you released a section of Skyrim, it would be crap. It would be an awful demo. No one would like it.
It doesn't work for all games.
Yeah, so it does depend on the game, I think.
I just think if you look at the reaction to the Xbox event recently, where they showed air quotes gameplay for all their new games, which didn't have any gameplay in it, the reaction to that was quite clear. People want gameplay.
Whether it's actual
in-game footage, people want to see the actual game that they're buying. So either let them see somebody else playing it like in depth, or let them play it a bit themselves. People deserve to know what they're paying for.
All right.
So, Kevin.
I'm going to call it there.
So, Kevin.
What? Hello?
Does early access hinder or benefit video game development?
It's, as a group, we have all agree it benefits if done correctly.
Smashed it.
Anyone got anything else to say? They all good?
No more burning issues. I feel like that was a successful podcast, and I feel like
we could make a whole podcast about the Star Citizens.
Yeah, I'm as we're speaking, I'm just looking at the April report, Ben, and you'll if you read it in detail and actually look at the what did you say, 5 things they've worked on? They've done tons of work.
Like elevator doors. Yeah.
Big stuff.
We could.
Look, would you get in an elevator that didn't have doors?
That's got a point.
Things are important for immersion.
All right, well, so Adam, you might be hosting the next one. So if you're hosting the next one, we can do a whole Star Citizen chat if you want to.
I'm so down.
No, it's just going to be on elevator doors.
Just on elevator doors.
How important are elevator doors in video games?
All right, Kevin, sign us off.
I actually know my answer to that.
So, wait, should we test it? Adam, do you know what the social media is for us?
No.
Right, well, you better get learning it, because you're going to be the guy I call on whenever I do mine.
It's Praise the Pickle.
Don't worry, Adam. We'll confuse people. Just learn it.
All right, Dan, what is the social media?
No, Kev, you have to do my one. Come on.
Oh, what? What's your one?
Oh, don't worry.
You can reach us on Twitter and Instagram. Praise the Pickle.
No.
You can reach us. No, sorry. Twitter is Praise the Pickle. Twitter is Praise the Pickle. Instagram is Praise the Pickle Podcast. Is that right?
Yeah.
Email, we are praisethepicklepodcast@gmail.com. Facebook we don't use because bun Facebook. And you can also find us at www.praisethepickle.com.
Hit us up on all your... we're on everything really, aren't we? Most generic podcast places.
Yeah, we're on every platform almost.
Yeah.
If there's a platform we're not on that you want us on, let us know.
We'll love you and leave you, and we'll see you next week.
Toodles, everybody!
Pickle!
Bye-bye.
Bye.